Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Dr. Doug McBride will lose control and come to blows with Joey Armstrong. It all begins when Doug starts to suspect that his wife, Vanessa McBride, is getting too close to the enigmatic casino owner. The tension is electric. Doug is a brilliant but troubled man, respected in the medical community but plagued by a destructive gambling addiction. He keeps his double life carefully hidden behind the mask of his white coat, but the cracks are beginning to show. Vanessa, graceful and sharp, has always been Doug's anchor. She's stood by him through his relapses and reckless bets, even after he nearly lost everything they had. But now she's changing. She's distant. She's secretive. She's spending late nights at Joey Armstrong's casino under the guise of helping Doug negotiate down his growing debt. Joey, charming and predatory, knows exactly how to manipulate vulnerability. He spots Vanessa's frustration, her loneliness, and slowly pulls her into his orbit. Whether out of genuine affection or as a power play, he begins making Vanessa feel seen in a way Doug hasn't in years. Doug feels it. He calls Vanessa constantly, obsessively, and when she doesn't pick up one night, something in him snaps. It's raining outside, the streets are slick and glowing under neon casino signs. Doug wanders the city in a haze of fury and desperation, ending up at a rundown bar near the edge of the strip. He drinks until the world tilts. The booze fuels his anger, blurring the line between reality and paranoia. In his drunken state, he remembers a small comment Vanessa made weeks ago about Joey's penthouse suite above the casino. A detail she never should have known unless she'd been there. That's where she is, he thinks. He leaves the bar, stumbles into the street, and drives toward Joey's high-rise, teeth clenched, heart pounding. The image of Vanessa in Joey's arms has nested in his brain and is clawing at his sanity. When Doug arrives, he doesn't hesitate. He stumbles through the lobby, past a startled concierge who knows better than to stop a man like him. The elevator ride feels eternal. And then, he's at the door. He doesn't knock. He bursts in. What he sees confirms his worst fears. Vanessa, disheveled, wrapped in one of Joey's silk robes, freezes. Joey steps out from the bathroom, shirtless, confident even in the chaos. The room goes silent for a beat. Then Doug lunges. Joey isn't a man to be caught off guard for long. He sidesteps Doug's initial attack, slamming him against the wall. The fight is brutal, fueled by betrayal, rage, and years of unspoken pain. Doug is desperate, sloppy. Joey is precise, almost surgical. He pins Doug, throws a punch, and then another. Vanessa screams for them to stop, but it's already gone too far. The tipping point comes when Doug pulls a letter opener from the desk. His movements are wild, uncoordinated, but the intent is clear. Joey, now defending his life, reacts instinctively. He grabs a heavy sculpture from the shelf and strikes. Doug crumples to the ground. Blood pools. Time stretches. Vanessa is frozen, mouth open in a silent scream. Joey drops the sculpture. There's a moment of silence, of disbelief. Then Joey snaps into action. He checks Doug's pulse. Nothing. Doug McBride is dead. Panic sets in. Vanessa hyperventilates. Joey, though rattled, keeps his composure. He's been in worse situations, maybe not this bad, but bad enough to know that panic is a liability. He tells Vanessa they have two options: call the police and risk everything, or play it smart. Vanessa is in shock. She doesn't respond. So Joey calls his lawyer. The cover-up begins. Security footage from the penthouse elevator mysteriously disappears. Joey's staff is silenced with generous payouts. When the police arrive hours later, Joey calmly explains that Doug broke in and attacked him. That he had no choice. That it was self-defense. At first, the authorities are skeptical. A wealthy casino mogul killing a respected doctor? It smells wrong. But Joey has connections. He knows which judge to lean on, which officers to keep in his pocket. The narrative shifts. The press picks it up. Tragic confrontation. Doctor with history of gambling spirals into violent rage. They paint Doug as unstable, a man unraveling. Vanessa doesn't speak to the media. She barely speaks at all. She spends days locked in their house, the silence heavier than ever. She replays that night over and over in her mind. The smell of alcohol on Doug's breath. The rage in his eyes. The final moment when Joey struck. Vanessa doesn't defend Joey publicly. She doesn't lie for him, but she doesn't contradict him either. In court, her testimony is carefully neutral. She confirms the events, but leaves out her emotions. The jury buys it. Joey walks free. Officially, it was self-defense. Unofficially, money made sure the right wheels turned. Doug is buried in a quiet ceremony attended by few. Most of his colleagues are too stunned to make sense of it. Some whisper that they saw the signs. That Doug had always been high-strung. That the gambling problem had taken its toll. Vanessa is left to shoulder the grief and guilt. She's haunted by the what-ifs. What if she had answered his call? What if she had stayed away from Joey? What if she had told someone, anyone, what was happening before it got out of control? Joey, meanwhile, returns to his empire. But the shadows linger. He knows he crossed a line that night. Not because of the kill he's seen worse, but because Vanessa looked at him differently afterward. Not like a savior. Not even like a lover. Just like someone she could never truly trust again. Their relationship becomes brittle. She pulls away. He tries to draw her back in with gifts, gestures, even plans to whisk her away to Europe. But it's not enough. Something broke that night, something unfixable. Joey might be free in the eyes of the law, but Vanessa sees the truth every time she looks at him. The fallout stretches beyond the crime. Doug's colleagues begin digging into his final weeks. They uncover more debt than they expected. An offshore account. A mysterious wire transfer just days before his death. Whispers start that maybe Doug wasn't just a victim. Maybe he was in over his head. Maybe he was desperate enough to confront a dangerous man like Joey. Still, none of it brings peace. Vanessa spirals in private. She stops going to work. She stops answering messages. Her family grows concerned. One day she disappears for 72 hours and returns without explanation. No one knows where she went, but something in her changes. She's colder now. Detached. Joey tries to reclaim their connection. He throws her a lavish birthday party in an attempt to rekindle what they had. The guest list is stacked with Vegas elites, influencers, and power players. But Vanessa barely smiles. She sits through it like a ghost. That night, Joey finds her crying alone in one of the guest rooms. She tells him, quietly, that she doesn't know who she is anymore. And that's the beginning of the end. Joey starts losing control in small, noticeable ways. He becomes more aggressive with his staff. His gambling dens begin facing inspections. Rumors start swirling in back rooms and boardrooms alike. Vanessa may not be talking, but others are. People who knew Doug. People who want justice. As the pressure builds, so does the sense that everything Joey built is starting to crumble. And somewhere in that chaos, Vanessa begins to plot her escape. Joey Armstrong knew the illusion wouldn't last forever. Even with Doug McBride gone, even with the courts declaring him innocent, something deeper was unraveling beneath the surface. His empire still stood, but its foundations were shifting. Whispers were growing louder. Deals once seamless began to stall. Partners became cautious. Investors pulled out with polite excuses. And always, there was Vanessa. She moved through the halls of Joey's penthouse like a ghost, hollow-eyed and silent. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply existed, haunted. At night, she would sit by the large glass windows overlooking the strip, staring into the city lights, remembering. Joey watched her from a distance, unable to reach her. He brought her gifts. She didn't touch them. He tried soft words. She barely responded. Her silence became its own form of judgment, more damning than any court ruling. Joey began to drink more. At first, it was just to take the edge off. Then it became habit. The sharp, calculated man who once ran the city's most ruthless casino operations started making mistakes. He snapped at employees. He forgot appointments. His temper flared. And people noticed. The underworld of Las Vegas had no patience for weakness. His rivals, long held at bay, began circling. Meanwhile, Vanessa was changing. Grief had transformed into something else, clarity. She understood now how deep Joey's power ran and how much blood had stained its path. Doug wasn't the first to fall. Just the closest. The most personal. She began collecting things: documents, emails, voice messages. Quietly, systematically. Every piece of leverage she could find. She wasn't sure what she would do with it yet, but she needed to be ready. Just in case. One evening, Vanessa went back to the hospital where she once volunteered. No one expected her. She just showed up and asked to speak to the director. The conversation was brief, but meaningful. She wanted to start a fund in Doug's name. Mental health awareness. Addiction treatment. Quietly, she was rewriting her narrative. Pulling away from Joey, step by step. Joey sensed it. One night, drunk and furious, he confronted her. He demanded to know what she was doing. Why she kept disappearing. Why she looked at him like a stranger. Vanessa didn't yell. She simply told him the truth. That she couldn't forget. That she couldn't forgive. That she didn't love him. Joey shattered a glass against the wall and stormed out. The next morning, Vanessa was gone. No note. No warning. Just gone. Joey searched for her, pulled every string he could, but it was no use. She had erased herself from his world. Vanessa didn't run far. She stayed in Nevada, under a different name, in a quiet motel in Henderson. She spent weeks organizing the files she'd taken from Joey's home office and laptop. Names. Bank accounts. Bribes. Everything. She debated for days whether to go to the police. In the end, she chose a journalist. The article dropped like a bomb. It didn't name Vanessa, but the evidence was clear. Years of corruption, money laundering, and judicial manipulation. The killing of Doug McBride wasn't even the headline, it was the catalyst. The exposé focused on Joey's empire, his connections to judges, and the systemic rot that kept his business afloat. The media frenzy was immediate. Joey denied everything. He called it slander. He threatened lawsuits. But the damage was done. The feds moved in. The casino was raided. His accounts were frozen. People he thought loyal began flipping. His lawyer disappeared overseas. And Joey? Joey was left standing in a penthouse stripped of its opulence, watching his kingdom collapse. The arrest was quiet. No grand chase. No spectacle. Just a knock on the door. Joey didn't fight. He just nodded and let them cuff him. Vanessa watched the coverage from her motel room. She didn't smile. There was no joy in any of it. Only a dull ache. Justice had come, but peace had not. Joey's trial became the event of the year. Cameras swarmed the courthouse. Every former associate of his was dragged into the light. But the charge of Doug's murder didn't stick. There were too many layers. Too much ambiguity. The official story remained self-defense. What stuck instead were the financial crime, the bribes, the laundering, the blackmail. Joey was sentenced to 30 years. Even behind bars, Joey tried to manipulate the system. He offered information in exchange for leniency. He tried to buy protection. But his influence was gone. The new players in town wanted him erased. Slowly, deliberately, his world inside the prison grew smaller. Isolation. Fear. Paranoia. Vanessa, meanwhile, began rebuilding. She moved to a small town in Oregon under her real name. She took a job at a nonprofit dealing with addiction recovery. In every session she led, she saw pieces of Doug's struggles, his weaknesses, his humanity. She didn't talk about what happened. She didn't need to. Her work was her penance. But memory is persistent. Every time she passed a casino billboard, her stomach turned. Every time she heard someone laugh the way Joey used to, her pulse quickened. Healing was not linear. Some days were tolerable. Others were unbearable. A year later, Vanessa received a letter from the prison. It was from Joey. The envelope sat unopened on her kitchen table for weeks. Finally, one stormy evening, she read it. Joey apologized. Not just for Doug, but for everything. For the lies. The manipulation. The violence. He claimed he loved her. That he still did. That she was the only thing that ever made him feel human. Vanessa burned the letter. 3 years after the trial, Joey Armstrong was found dead in his cell. Official cause, suicide. But rumors suggested otherwise. One story claimed he was silenced by rivals. Another said he orchestrated his own death to escape. No one knew the truth. Vanessa did not attend any memorial. She read the news, closed her laptop, and went for a walk. In time, she remarried a kind man named Elliot who knew her past only in fragments. She told him Doug had died in a tragic accident. She never mentioned Joey. They had 2 children. Vanessa raised them to be kind, honest, and strong. Still, at night, sometimes she would sit alone and think about the way one choice, just one, can spiral into chaos. She would think about Doug's last phone call. The one she didn't answer. About Joey's eyes the moment before the killing blow. About the line between love and possession, and how easily it can be crossed. She kept one photo of Doug, hidden in a drawer. And some nights, she would take it out, look at it, and whisper, "I'm sorry." That was how it ended. Not with revenge. Not with triumph. But with a quiet reckoning. A story buried beneath the lights of Las Vegas. A story of a doctor, a gambler, a woman torn in two, and the cost of choices made in desperation and pain. Years after the dust had settled, the city had forgotten. Las Vegas was good at that, letting the past vanish beneath the noise of jackpots and neon lights. But some ghosts don't fade so easily. Vanessa had crafted a new life, but a part of her never stopped looking over her shoulder. Her children were growing fast, unaware of the storm that once shaped their mother. Elliot, ever supportive, never pried. He understood there were shadows she couldn't escape. And for the most part, Vanessa had made peace with that. But then came the phone call. It was a detective from Nevada. A new task force had reopened a number of old financial cases tied to Joey Armstrong's network. While Joey was gone, the remnants of his empire were not. Shell companies. Silent partners. Accounts still funneling money. And Vanessa's name had come up. Not as a suspect, but as someone who might help connect the final dots. At first, she wanted nothing to do with it. But something gnawed at her. Joey may have died, but the poison he left behind still lingered. And maybe, just maybe, helping dismantle the last of it was the final step she needed to truly let go. She flew to Vegas alone. The city felt different. Colder. Or maybe she was. The detective, a blunt but fair woman named Reyes, laid it all out. Joey had left more behind than just crimes. She had left enemies. Some were now in power. Some were still dangerous. And there were whispers that Joey's death had not been what it seemed. Vanessa didn't want conspiracy. She wanted closure. So she agreed to help. Quietly. Over the course of several weeks, she met with Reyes in backrooms and anonymous offices. She pieced together timelines, remembered names, described rooms and meetings. She handed over documents she hadn't known were still hidden in an old storage box, things she thought she'd burned. And then came the second call. A man named Marcus Vane, once Joey's enforcer and silent partner, now ran a new gambling syndicate out of Phoenix. He had found out Vanessa was in town and digging. And he wanted her silenced. Reyes insisted on placing Vanessa under protective watch. But Vanessa had learned not to be afraid. She'd stared death in the face once before and survived. She met with Marcus directly at a public cafe, under police surveillance. He was older now. Lean. More careful. But still cold. He tried to intimidate her, offered her money, offered her silence. Vanessa said no to all of it. And in a moment of clarity, she looked Marcus in the eye and said, "If you ever show your face near my family, I'll finish what Joey started." She walked away. That night, Reyes and her task force made their move. Raids. Seizures. Arrests. The last of Joey's network collapsed in a week. Marcus Vane was taken into custody and indicted. And Vanessa flew home. This time, the ghosts didn't follow. At home, her children greeted her with drawings and stories about school. Elliot poured her a glass of wine and told her dinner was already in the oven. It was a quiet night. Normal. And for the first time in years, Vanessa felt like she could breathe. She wrote a letter the next morning. Not to Joey. Not to Doug. But to herself. She wrote about grief. About guilt. About surviving not just tragedy, but the weight of memory. She wrote about how she had once been a woman torn between a broken man and a dangerous one, and how she had almost lost herself in both. She didn't write for forgiveness. She wrote for freedom. The letter ended up tucked into the back of her bookshelf, behind a photo of her children at the beach. It didn't need to be read by anyone else. It was just her final chapter. Years later, her daughter would grow up to become a lawyer, advocating for victims of domestic violence. Her son would become a psychologist, helping others battle addiction. Neither knew the full story, but they knew their mother had survived something dark. And that was enough. And Vanessa? She grew older. Wiser. She still walked past the edge of shadows from time to time, but they no longer pulled at her. She lived quietly. She laughed more. And when people asked about her past, she simply said, "I've seen a lot. And I made it out." And that, in the end, was her legacy. Not scandal. Not tragedy. But resilience.